what the farmers are arguing is that Rachel Reeves, by doing what she's doing, is solving one problem, i.e. very wealthy people buying land so as a way of kind of avoiding inheritance tax which they can then pass on to their children, but has created a whole new problem where farmers, they may have been farming this land for 50 years or so, are suddenly going to get clobbered. The family won't be able to pass it on to the next generation, as has been the tradition in British farming, because the inheritance tax bill will be so large. Now, there's a dispute over numbers, whereas the government is saying, well, it's only probably 500 estates that would be affected in the course of a year. The NFU, the National Farmers Union, are saying, well, where do you get those numbers from? It's going to be far more than that. And all sorts of people will be drawn into it because as farmland has grown in value, so the value of your farm has grown.
Yeah, and indeed, the problem of rich people buying up land has in fact actually exacerbated this problem, because what it's done is it's driven up land prices enormously. England, Britain has some of the most expensive land prices anywhere in Europe, and therefore if you've got a farm which you've been sat on for 50 years, it's basically exploded in value. So if you die, then you could find yourself subject to inheritance tax. But you're right, there's basically a dispute at the heart of this about the figures, because the Treasury say it's 500 estates, the richest estates, people like James Dyson or Jeremy Clarkson, rich people who have bought up agricultural land. And the farmers say, well, yeah, maybe if you're just accounting for the land cost itself, maybe not many farms basically get to the million threshold or 3 million threshold. But then if you count all of the assets on that land, because farming machinery and everything tends to be so expensive, then you could get more farmers on it, and the government haven't necessarily been as clear with those figures as they could have been. But it is worth saying that with the regime as is being proposed, you could theoretically have an estate of £3 million and not pay a penny of inheritance tax on it. Let me just explain what I mean by that. If you have a farm owned by two people and you intend to pass it on to a child or grandchild, well, what you will get is two standard £500,000 tax-free allowances. That's charged at the nil rate. You get 175 grand tax-free for the residence nil rate band. And then, because you're a farmer, you get two £1 million tax-free allowances for agricultural property inheritance. So there is a world where, frankly, lots of people here, even people who think they're going to be affected by this, unless they have a £3 million plus estate, and as long as they're passing it on to their children,